Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review the Wolverine. So, I think the main reason why I wanted to review this film is honestly just because this is like the last technical Wolverine Logan solo movie, and I've covered Origins and I've covered Logan, so I'm like, okay, I need to finish up the Wolverine series, and so now I decided to just finally just review this film to cover it. Here is the problem that I honestly hate about this movie. So basically, like, we have Origins, right? And then we have every single X-Men movie, and with the exclusion of Days of Future Past. Then we have the Wolverine, and then we have Days of Future Past, and then we have Logan. And I'm like, I hate the fact that this movie ties in Jean Grey in this film, and I honestly hate the fact that it feels like this is to tie into the X-Men films. I'm like, why can't this just be its own thing? Why can't this just be its own? That's all. Like I would love an edited version of this movie where there is no Jean Grey dream sequences, and there is no end credit scene at the end, and like somehow they just connect the Wolverine movie with the Logan film. Like, give me one stretch of a scene that is to connect the two movies. Like, man, if they could give us an animated film between the Wolverine and Logan that has nothing to do with Days of Future Past, or has an easy connection between all of them or something, that like I could buy, like that would be great. Like, just do something where you have like a what if story where what if Days of Future Past never happened, and it just like went from like it just did some Logan story. Like, give me that. I'd be okay with it. Uh, yeah, definitely do a what if to just retcon that crap, so I can just see one episode like, oh, okay, great, of what if. That'd be freaking great to see Wolverine in a what if story. That would blow my mind. Because I'd be so excited. So, going into this movie, I really just love the culture of it, where, of course, we have a character who is taken out of his elements, so to speak, and now has to learn a whole culture or way of things. Kind of like or Big Trouble Little China kind of movie, where we have Kurt Russell's character who goes overseas and tries to like kick some butt over there, but then eventually finds out that like he needs friends. Kind of like this movie, kind of needs friends. So like Wolverine reminds me of a lot, funnily enough, of Big Trouble in Little China. But this movie is mostly done in Japan. So we have a Canadian that is to go over into Japan to try to do something wildly different, which I kind of like how they like tie in like the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in this movie, which I think Nagasaki is where Wolverine actually was. I like the fact that they are to kind of gear up for the fact to tell us that seemingly both Logan and Mariko are eventually going to be in a relationship together, because they prepare that with the whole love motel kind of thing. I also really enjoy the fact that Wolverine was to eventually be turned into a mortal in this movie, seemingly. And like the point where Wolverine is turned to us and say that he's tired, I'm like, freaking yeah, like great. Like, I love this. Not that like I want to see a tired Wolverine. No, I'm just like, the fact that they put and made him mortal in this movie, I'm like, oh my god, that was brilliant. When I watched the trailer and they were trying to figure out how, like, to showcase to us in the trailer of how he's going to be mortal, I was like, yeah, this is freaking awesome. Maybe the payout of going from mortal to immortal maybe wasn't the greatest. Like we had that bizarrish like octopus thing that eventually he's uh like Yukio I got it. That was like a goofy thing to do. But everything between that, eventually the lead up of Wolverine or Logan trying to continue to do this, but realizing that he's going to get some bullets in him, and when that is to happen, how we see a Wolverine that now is having to struggle to try to plop out some bullets out of his body. Like, those parts were interesting. I really enjoyed that. I really liked that. And how we have a slow healing Wolverine just kind of also gears us up for Logan when eventually we're to really see that this character is to really break down and really get old and to really just eventually also get adamantium poisoning into his bate. Spoilers for Logan if you haven't seen it. That's been out for a while too. That's why I would say some certain things. So, with that said, I think I have talked and ranted about this movie. It's just a fun film. I like the fact that they also try as much as possible to try and shift his wardrobe a little bit. Like, we get the black freaking dress clothes, and like we get that for a bulk of the film. They try to give us some kind of different kind of Wolverine in this movie, but they always go back to the tank top. It's always a tank top thing with Wolverine. So that's a thing that I can just be like, okay, like he always has to have his Wolverine uniform, which is a tank top, because Origins will tell us that, and then also uh, so will well, Logan, like he technically has some like flannel and stuff on and coats and whatever, but still, like considering Origin set us up for this guy to wear a tank top. Like in the other movies, I'm sure he's just like, dude, I'm not gonna I'm getting like, no, I'm not gonna wear a tank top in this movie. So yeah, so let's gear it up. Let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just talk about this movie and crank it out, because without a doubt, it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time you do to spoil this film. So yeah. So if you haven't seen every single X-Men movie, you're going to be kind of confused when you go into this film, because this film is to basically tie in X-Men The Last Stand. If people don't know what happens in X-Men Last Stand, I would suggest going and watching that movie, because I am going to spoil the ending of that movie right now. Because technically, we technically have to, because this is to be tied with The Last Stand. So, in The Last Stand movie, Wolverine was to go and try to get to Jean Grey as she's using her power to kill everyone. And so Wolverine is to get closer and closer to get to Jean, and Jean is trying to dust frickin' Wolverine away, but he just keeps re-healing himself, and then he ends up going and is getting close to Jean, and so Jean is to say like, you would die for them, and so Wolverine goes and stabs Jean, and he says, no, I would die for you. And then that's where all the water starts falling, and all the stuff that Jean was using her power and trying to just like shift and push all this stuff all around, and eventually try to dust off Wolverine, but eventually he just comes back because healing factor. And kind of like the X-Men first movie, where like Wolverine is trying to use his power to try to get and cut up that Statue of Liberty. Like kind of the same similar moment where technically Wolverine is still having to stab a lady, which is kind of weird. Stab a woman. First it was Statue of Liberty, then it was Jean Grey, and then like Wolverine doesn't stab up a lady in, in Days of Future Past because really all of that stuff is just to like. What if Wolverine stabbed Mystique? Like, yay! Everything is solved because really the whole like Days of Future Past thing really relies on Mystique. You'll eventually find that out eventually when you see this movie. Go ahead and watch it because it all bizarrely ties to Mystique of all people. Which I'm like, yeah, they probably should have killed her years ago, but like they had to come up with something for Mystique to be a valued superhero, I guess, or technically like a valued superhero until eventually you get to Dark Phoenix, and then, anyways, so Mystique, I guess, really doesn't matter. She's just like what Nightcrawler's mother, maybe, depending on like how old Mystique can be and how old Nightcrawler could be. Doesn't quite make sense. Anyways, pushing on. So now Wolverine is having dreams about Jean Grey, and he just dreams about like stabbing her weirdly. Just consistent stabbing that Wolverine is to have with Jean Grey because he just can't get her death out of his head. Because man, is he just a guy that just has nightmares all the time. Anyways, you would think with all the lives that Wolverine has led, you would think that Wolverine and Jean Grey, that whole thing, would just be like one of a million things that he would be dreaming about because he'd be probably dreaming about when he was in 1808 or something or whatever. Like him stabbing his dad, or like you would think like any of the horrors that Logan would have done over time would have just compiled into his brain, where he would just see this like chain of all the horrible things that he's ever done. Let me pause here for a second. All right. So, the big thing that I think is probably more important than the dream sequence that uh, eventually Logan is going to be having with Jean. Let's get into it. So, uh, Logan is to be in Nagasaki when uh, atomic bombs were to fall upon Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Whenever that time period was to happen, is the time of which that Wolverine is to supposedly be a prisoner of war, and he is to be held up into uh, this I would call it seemingly a underground prison because like you can't exactly just put Wolverine in a normal prison cell. He'll just ring through it, and so like he can escape seemingly at any time. So they had to like burrow a well for him to just stay in, and but even still, he's kind of just like clawing his way up to the very top of this like well opening to just kind of see what's going on. And so uh, that is to lead us to have bombs supposedly falling. And so we have this guy who is to be called Yoshida, who is to basically just say, like, hey, everybody, like, freaking, I'm going to just release all the prisoners, release everybody. We have one soldier who is trying to shoot down almost Yoshida from opening up all the prison cells. And Yoshida's like, hey, man, freaking, all these people are going to die anyways. You might as well just give them a chance. You might as well just give them a shot. So, all of Yoshida's superiors are going ahead and just taking off their shirts and taking off their suspenders, and they're just wanting to just go and take a bath before they end up getting freaking hit with this bomb. No. Every single one of them are taking this dagger of theirs and just jabbing it into their stomach because that's normally what they do when a time like this would happen where a lot of Japanese soldiers at some point in time would eventually sacrifice their own life because they had failed with something, or reasonably, like, as if I'm saying this as if I know exactly. Um, there's a lot of times where some, like, Japanese soldiers or warriors, whichever, uh, would feel like they have disgraced and they would otherwise like stab themselves in the stomach and keel over rather than like putting up with what is to happen next. So we have Ishida who is to go and see Wolverine as he's kind of poking his eyes through what's going on. Ishida is to break the chain of Wolverine's cell to eventually have Yoshida go and look on at his superiors. And so the bomb is to drop, and while it's to come their way, Wolverine is to eventually grab Yoshida and say, hey man, let's go into this well. Logan tosses this guy down this well, and so Logan kind of just goes and slides down there with him. And so as this bomb is coming down, like parts of it is coming down on these guys, we have Logan who's trying to shield Yoshida with this metal uh, like shield of sorts, and eventually that is to lead with Wolverine just like have been severely burnt, but then he's just kind of like he's like to CG his way back to his healing factored health, which I'm like, hey man, like it's still like that's still a whole thing that they did with Logan, like still is okay, like it still doesn't, like it wouldn't bug me. It's like, hey man, freaking like that looks like an awesome thing that they tried to do to make Logan look like he's freaking a just charcoal of a man. So Wolverine heals back up to his normal self, and so now we have Yoshida who is to basically call Wolverine a monster, um, or I guess for eventually, uh, I think Yoshida eventually tells stories to Mariko about a character called the Usuri, I believe. I'm don't think I'm pronouncing that right. Or it could be Yukuri or Usuri or something, somewhere along that route. But moving on. So I'm going to go and cover the whole Nazasaki thing here instead of having to wait to when it comes up later and remember where that spot is. So after this moment, after supposedly Logan has saved Yoshida, and eventually the dust has set basically um, for the attack on Nazasaki. Yoshida goes and is to give Wolverine his blade. And again, I'm not covering this in exact order the way but I want this all to be done with so I don't have to go back. And I like complete stories in one fell swoop, and then I'll cover the bigger pieces, the bigger chunks, the bigger stuff going on. That's why I hate when you have to wait till like a third of the movie and then they cover some small thing that happened in the very beginning of the film. I'm like, why not just complete that whole thing in one fell scene? And then, like, why does there always have to be like 30 different transitions in one movie where it's like you have like two different stories or three different stories or sometimes five different stories going on all at the same time, and it's so freaking confusing, and I always mess that stuff up where it seems like there's eight different stories of eight different people, and I don't think I can watch that kind of show or kind of movie because you'll just see that I'm just like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know. But anyways, so Yoshida is to give the sword to Logan, and so Logan is to say like, hey man, like Like, you keep it and I'll come back for it one day. I'll ask for it one day. So, cue us now having reasonably Wolverine now supposedly had woken up from the dream of Nagasaki to eventually now be in the bed of Jean Grey. And probably a lot of people probably watched this originally are kind of confused. They're like, hey, what's going on here? It seems that Wolverine is back with Jean Grey. I think the very first time that I watched this, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And so all of a sudden, Wolverine is to mention to Jean Grey that she'll never hurt her again, that he took a vow, and Jean Grey's like a solemn vow. Like, yeah, like, Logan, you're never, none of that is to ever mean a lick of anything. Like, you can't hold your anger in. It's just impossible. And we'll eventually see easily in this movie that Wolverine will decide to go back on his promise or his vow. Like, what would be the issue of the vow when he is to eventually break it? Nothing, because he's freaking Wolverine. So, uh, but so Jean Grey is to make the joke about the solemn vow, and Jean Grey is to say it's like, well, you've technically already hurt me. And then Logan is to look down at Jean Grey's chest to see that there is a snict still through it. And now Logan is to pull back and be like, oh no, like, I hurt you again. No, no. And then all of a sudden we find out that this is a dream. I'm like, okay, like, double swerve. Good on you, Wolverine movie, for giving us a double swerve. So we're to really just find out that now Wolverine is just this, like, disheveled man that he used to be, like, fairly long hair, big fat beard, Grizzly Adams looking motherfucker, because of course he is, because this whole thing is to be tied into him going back to Canada, and also him technically being Grizzly Adams looking is to basically tie into the fact that there is to be a bear story here. So him looking like Grizzly Adams in a bear story makes a lot of sense. So Logan is to uh, eventually be seemingly living in this cave, just kind of having a bunch of random items in this cave. So Wolverine is to go about his like walkabout on the forest. He's to take his claws out and like swing against the tree. Uh, and then he all of a sudden has this bear there, like, "Rrr." It's like, and Logan's like, yeah, like, me and you are kind of animals, so like, if anything, you're not really gonna attack me. So Wolverine is to be in Canada, kind of minding his own business, eventually going to some shop of sorts to go and like buy something. And I'm just like, how is it that Wolverine technically has money? Like, does he just kind of have like a $5 bill stuffed in his boot, or kind of like, how is it that Wolverine technically still has this dollarino, dinero, whatever? Like, you would think a guy probably living off the grid. Like, is he getting like military money from somewhere? Like, did he retire from the military? Maybe like the accumulation of years of service from Wolverine would eventually have us like have him get big fat checks from the military because he's lived forever. Like, so maybe like a retirement from him would get a big fat check compared to anybody else because of his numerous years of service. Because he didn't eventually go into different names, or he didn't go into different kind of things, but I don't know. But I'm curious. So Logan is to eventually go and buy something, and it seems like there are a bunch of hunter guys that are all going and buying something as well, and saying to put it on their tab, and they are to drive off, and one guy is to almost accidentally have one gun go off, And Wolverine is like, God, you guys are just morons. So, uh, this cashier's dimension to Wolverine, I don't know what it is going on right now. I have a scratchy beard. Or a scratchy, nah. Anyways, so this woman, this cashier's dimension, like, hey, you a hunter? And Wolverine is like, well, I used to be. So, we just get to a point here where Logan is to go off and eventually be in his cave, in his domain. All of a sudden, to hear a bunch of like horrifying sounds going on. It seems like people are to be attacked by something or to be killed by something. So Logan is to make his way to eventually find what this something is, because normally he is the guy to eventually have to go against something and to try and like help people out. So Logan is to eventually go on and find that Logan spots some like camps that have been ripped out, and really also Wolverine is to eventually find a bear that seemingly had a dart within him, and so Logan, noticing the dart or noticing the arrow, realizing that it's a poisoned arrow, is just like, okay, well, like this bear is to eventually die anyway, so like if anything I just want his pain to be less than. And so Wolverine pops out the claws, the bear is starting to be angry, and Logan is like, hey, don't make me do this. So Wolverine goes, stabs the bear, kills the bear, so that way the bear can die in peace. So uh so now all of a sudden there is a guy at the bar, at this Canadian bar, with a story to tell. So we have this guy who is to just talk about like he's the last survivor of this whole camp thing, and how this bear attacked him and blah blah blah. So Logan is to make his way into this bar and just be like, hey, like this guy, like, uh, were you a part of that camp? And the guy was like, yeah, I'm the sole survivor of that camp. And Logan's like, hey, all right, well, hey, let me go and buy him a drink. Let me go and buy this man a drink, because man, this guy is a hero. So so the drinks are coming, and so Logan is to go and take this arrow that he found and stick it into this guy's hand, and to just be like, yeah. So some stupid hunter had decided to lace his darts with poison and then shoot it into a bear, and so the bear um, went on a rampage and went berserk and killed 5 people. And also it seemed like the dart that the guy had hit the arrow with is illegal. I wonder who that could be. And so the one guy should just be like, well, my arrows aren't laced with poison. It's like, then Logan just goes like, well, good, because then you have nothing to worry about. If your arrows aren't laced with poison, then you're not going to die from it. So that all of a sudden, and Logan was also pouring the alcohol onto the guy's wound, also just kind of just dig into the whole thing of just like, yeah, freaking, I'm just gonna torture you. So all of a sudden, there are to be certain guys that are to all stand up to go up against Logan. And so Logan's like, okay, well, like, sorry, Gene, like, freaking, like, I'm gonna go and do this. I'm gonna fight all these people. So all of a sudden, we have Yukio that comes into this bar and is to mention about her sword. that it's a certain kind of sword that specializes in separating like head from body. So she is to demonstrate this by going and slicing this one chair and slicing this beer bottle. So uh, everybody's just like, well, okay, how about you guys just get the heck out of here? So Wolverine is to, of course, go with Yukio because Yukio is to now have been on a mission to try and find Logan because she wants to give Logan Yoshida's sword and to also have Logan go all the way to Japan just for Yoshida to say goodbye to Logan. And Logan is just like, are you insane? Like, I'm not going to go all the way to Japan just to say goodbye to somebody. Like, I don't know how many people in my life have died. Like, several freaking people. I'm not going to go all the way to Japan just to say goodbye to yet another person that I'd met in my life of plenty. Like, this is not going to happen. There is also this one part where Logan is to see this like huge like mound of just candy bars, I believe from the back seat of Yukio. So, anyways, so Yukio is basically telling Logan, it's like, you're gonna go to Japan whether you want to or not. Like, if Yoshida wants it, it's done. Like, freaking Yoshida is this rich guy, and yeah, you're just gonna have to just deal with it. So Logan is, of course, getting on his plane to eventually go to Japan, and so Yukio is telling Logan that it's like it's 16 hours, and Logan is like, "Oh God." Because if Wolverine Origins tells us that Logan hates to fly a 16-hour trip on probably the fastest plane possible to get there, still, it's just Logan. It's just like, God, like, why do I have to be on a plane? Like, and like he also has to be on a plane when he's in Days of Future Past to, I guess, continue this joke that Wolverine hates planes. Why do we always have to have Logan on a plane? It happens all the time in these movies. I don't understand. Like, why? Like, is it to make the consistent joke of it? Is it to remind us that Logan hates planes through every bit of every one of these movies? And also, why didn't Logan hate being on the Quinjet? Isn't that one and the same kind of thing? Because here's the thing, they don't mention a lick of that in any of the other X-Men movies, but any of the movies that are to have Wolverine films or to be a film that is Days of Future Past that ties into the Wolverine film, all of a sudden Wolverine is to be sick from being on this plane. So there must have been a problem there where they didn't like think about it when it came to whole of like continuity errors. How is the Quinjet is different from any normal plane? That is the question I ask you. Like, did Wolverine have certain kind of pills that he took while he was with the X-Men that he didn't take any other time to just calm him? Like, was Xavier doing some mental? Anyways, pushing on. I'm taking too much time for this. So, Wolverine is go on the plane with Yukio. I'm sure, like, Logan is to be the very talkative chap that's going to be for 16 hours just talking to Yukio about every single thing that he could know about anybody. No, like Yukio and Wolverine are just having 16 hours of just this. Just like Wolverine is just staring off into whatever, and Yukio is to probably desperately want to tell Logan something, but Logan is just like, just, just Just shush. Just shushola. Just no. Just yeah. Just no. Don't talk to me. 16 hours of this. 16 hours of me just being in fear, just clutching onto my chair, just like ah. I'm gonna die. So now we get off the plane. So Logan is, of course, to finally like kind of like go and see some sights of Japan out of his window of this car. And so he's kind of seeing how big Yoshida is, how there's these big billboards that say Yoshida on it. And so like we're to really understand that Yoshida is a rich la di da like guy, and basically him uh Yoshida was eventually the guy to uh, the help Japan eventually uh, build after the whole Hiroshima Nagasaki event. So Logan is to eventually go to Yoshida's place, and we have Yukio, who is to change into a much more traditional outfit because Yoshida is to like that. And we also have to have Logan, who has to kind of clean himself up. He's a little Grizzly Adams. And so now Logan has to get a little bit of a trim to look like how he looks like here. Little still a little bit hair shorter, you know what I'm saying? So we just have Wolverine, who is to be just like smacked and like hit and like pushed and shoved like a wild dog, like in this like tub as they're scrubbing his butt. You can just see his cheeks, and Logan is just like, I can do that part. I can do it. Okay. I got it. Like, because like these women are just like going after him like he's some wild dog that they have to like trim and clean and whatever. And it's just like so like hilarious. Uh so Logan is to get trimmed up and cleaned up, and so he's ending up being put into these clothes that could seem like he picked them out. And so all of a sudden Yukio is to look at Wolverine and just like, you got cleaned. And Logan is like, I feel violated. I don't know what you guys do here, but that's not cleaning. so, uh, so now Logan is to go and see Yoshida, who Yoshida is to be into this machine that has this like bizarre X-ray of a thing. And we also have Yoshida, who has to be in the most uncomfortable bed ever constructed, because this guy is basically sitting on a bed of screws that have to just kind of like prop him up. And I'm just like, this looks like the most uncomfortable bed I have ever seen in my life. Like, I'm wondering if the actor who had to be put into the scenes was just like, God, if you guys can just get me out of this bed in the quickest way possible, I'll never complain again. Because good God, it just looks like there's like freaking like giant nails behind this guy, just like propping him up. And I'm like, man, could you just imagine wanting to sit into the king's throne in the Game of Thrones and feel severely uncomfortable in that? Because there's like no cushion in that thing, and it's just swords all over the place just behind the guy. Probably has to be the most uncomfortable chair, but has to be the coolest looking throne, right? Yes. So maybe not. Because really, no cushion. And I would just be like, God, I can't freaking sit in this chair. There's no freaking way I'm going to sit in this chair, especially for less than like 20 minutes. I'd be like, no, like, give me some freaking throw pillows. Give me something. Like, give me some arch support. God dang it. So, anyways, I'm transitioning. I apologize. I love to just go into just rants while I'm talking about a movie. So Yoshida is to basically tell Logan that, hey man, like it's great to see you. Like freaking you, it looks like you've never aged, and of course you wouldn't because you are immortal. So, hey man, I'm just here to give you back my sword that you said that you were gonna come for, but you never did. You never write. You never tweet. You never call. Feels like the whole Creed situation again, where it's like, well, you never write, you never call, so I had to figure out some way to get your attention. So Yoshida is to give uh, Logan the sword that he was supposedly supposed to come for, and so Logan is just to say like, hey man, I thought all I was coming here was just to say goodbye to you, because Yoshida is to tell Logan, it's like, hey, like we have figured out a way to make you mortal. Like we have figured out a way to have you quite possibly trade over your powers, and so uh, like you are basically a man without a mission. You're just a Ronin, and so maybe it's time for you to finally rest, Logan. Maybe it's time for you uh, to finally trade over your powers. And Logan's like, you don't want what I got. Like like it kind of reminds us of the Origin movie uh, where Logan is to say this isn't a gift, it's a curse. So like a gift is something you can return. So Logan is to just be like, well, hey man, sorry you got sick, but I'm freaking out of here. But Yoshida's like, wait, Logan, it's like Mariko is in danger and I have to protect her. And so, because before Logan was eventually to go to Yoshida, Mariko was to get some information, and I'll tell you exactly what that is because we wait later on in the movie. Mariko is to find out that everything is going to be left to her because reasonably what's going to be happening is uh, Shingen can't really be trusted. And plus, Yoshida has always really loved Mariko, and so that's the real reason why Yoshida is giving all this up to Mariko. And plus, also like Yoshida probably, if he is to give up and give Mariko everything that she's to technically want, Yoshida probably would assume that Mariko is going to give back up the company to Yoshida, so that way that Yoshida can go and like take this company to where it needs to be. But Mariko needs to technically be protected until that whole transition happens. So but Logan is to eventually leave, and so what eventually happens is Mariko is almost kind of running out to this side, I guess, to jump off this side of Yoshida's home, and Logan is to run after her and to grab her before she's to leave, like this world basically. So Logan grabs her and to hold her, and at that same point like Logan is to tell like Murako, hey, it's slippery here. Hey, it's like watch out. Like she was already going to jump off and end her own life, but Logan is worried that there's some spots that might be slippery. I'm like, what is going on here? She was already going to jump off. Like I don't think she's going to be worried about slipping and falling anywhere at any point. So Mariko just runs back into her home, realizing that there is no way out of this, that she has to face this. And really facing this will probably mean that Shingen and his protege, who is to be Noburo, I'm probably ill pronouncing that, uh, like I feel that they're eventually just gonna be like, oh, Marco is to eventually be the one who's gonna be left with this stuff. Well, we're gonna have to kill her before that happens. So, uh, transition on. So we're to find out. Oh, I almost forgot about this. So, Yuriko in Canada, when she was to talk about the separator, separating head from body and stuff like that, she was also to mention how any number of these people are in a week from now going to die in a van together or in a truck together. So why kill them all now, Wolverine? So later on, now Yoshida is to supposedly die at the perfect time when Logan is to be there. He couldn't have died shortly thereafter, whichever. Uh, so while that's about to happen, Logan is going and resting because jet lag probably. And so Logan is having yet another dream about Jean Grey. And Jean Grey is like, hey man, like, why don't you take the old man up on his offer? It's like, you want to technically die. You want to be with me, right? Like, why don't you just give in to the old man? Like, hey man, you fought enough. Like, you can rest now. You can rest with me forever. As if, like, it's gonna really work out because all of a sudden maybe James Marsden, who is Cyclops, is gonna be knocking on the doors like, hey, remember me? Like, what's up with this? And then what is it gonna be, like Three's Company? Or it's gonna be like freaking like, I don't know. But anyways, pushing on. Because Cyclops is technically dead. Where is Cyclops in this? Like, where is like James Marsden Cyclops? Because technically he's dead. He probably could have came to Wolverine's dream too and said like, "Hey, yeah, like just reminding you, technically, I'm kind of dead because of you, Logan. Kinda. I'm kind of dead because of you, so you're aware. Because you didn't really stop me from going to Jean and dying from Jean. So technically, that's your fault, Logan. You could have stopped this at any time, Logan. You could have chose to stab her earlier on in the movie, and I would have been saved. But no, Jean killed me, so that's on you." He could have popped in. Anyways, so Logan is to kiss Jean, and all of a sudden he is to awake, kissing Viper, and Viper is to put her octopus-like mutant nullifier thing into Logan's system, which is to eventually go into his heart and to just like grasp onto it and slowly but surely start to make him mortal. So Logan is to wake up kissing Viper and is like, man, that woman has some anyways, so Logan is to wake up to have Yukio, almost Yu-Gi-Oh! Y'all move! Freaking card game going on here. Yukio is to tell Wolverine, like, his death, I did not foresee it because Yoshida is now dead, supposedly. I don't know how. I don't see the body. Somebody just said, hey, Yoshida's dead, and everyone just says, okay, like, I guess we'll just start exchanging the will now, and we'll just start having his funeral and just gearing up for, like, and also, we didn't. I don't think we saw the coffin. Was the coffin closed? Did Yoshida want a closed funeral with coffin? Because then, like, how could you have ever have known? How could you have confirmed Yoshida's death? Was there somebody there that was a legitimate doctor besides Viper that was given the pulse check and saying, "Yeah, he's dead. Let's have 12 other doctors tell us the same thing to confirm his death." There was never that scene. There was never that. Maybe he could have slowed his heart rate down, but still, it just doesn't quite seem right. So, so eventually we push on to, uh, oh, Yukio is to be like the best friend of Mariko, because we end up finding that Yukio uh, was to be a girl that was to be homeless, was just begging for scraps in the street. And since Mariko couldn't really find friends, really just Schengen just adopted Yuko, Yuiko to just say that, hey, like, since like might as well just adopt her, so that way like uh, this girl Marco will always have somebody. So, but it's kind of harsh. What eventually Schengen is to tell Yuko eventually later on in the movie, where Yuiko is eventually just some doll that Mariko is to eventually outgrow. I'm like, man, that is gonna be some like Richard Pryor the toy right there, where you just have this woman or girl that was just some plaything for somebody, and and then they just put up with her after that. Like, as if she felt like she was supposedly part of this family, but she really wasn't. She was just like, hey man, you're lucky that you're even here. Like, it's lucky that we even have the money to feed you every day. It's true. So, moving on. So, oh, so now we are to shift to Yoshida's funeral, and so here's the goofy thing. So we also have, where is the guy's name? Um, Harada, to also show up as this Japanese Hawkeye. You have to call him that. You have to call him the Japanese Hawkeye because he doesn't have an actual code name. So he's basically just Japanese Hawkeye. Like, if anything, they should have called him Hawkeye 2 or something. So Harada is to show up at this funeral to try to protect Mariko, and also while having to forcibly protect Mariko, also trying to protect Wolverine, who is technically trying to help Mariko. So, like, Harada and Logan's mission are one and the same. So that's why Harada would help Logan in these spots where Logan is just to be outnumbered and overwhelmed, because Logan is to realize that he's going to soon start to lose some of his healing factor. So, but Logan is the only one who is to spot certain things besides everyone else. So let's get into it. So, Yuko ends up taking Logan to this funeral, and so Logan is to meet Schengen, and so when Logan meets Schengen, Shingen is to say, like, oh, you're Logan. Like, my father has told me numerous stories about you. Well, like, now that you've seen Yoshida, how about you just crawl back to the cave that you were in? And so, like, Logan turns to Yukio and it's like, hey, do you want me to meet anybody else that they can just, just call me, like, garbage or anything? Like, do you want me to just. Any other people that I just can randomly meet here that are just going to call me garbage? And, like, can I just go back to America now? Or can I just go back to Canada now? To just live the rest of my life free and clear from all you people. No offense to what I just said there, you people. So, so now, Logan is to just kind of see this proceedings going on, and all of a sudden he is to start to see that these priest characters seemingly have tattoos, and he's like, okay, this seems a little weird. So Logan is to grab Mariko and just be like, hey, something's off about this, let's get out of here, this isn't right. All of a sudden we find out that these priests are gun holding some guns, some serious guns, just firing all over the place. And so now Logan and Marco are just running out of here. And so Wolverine is to claw up Snicked and go and try to like defend and just start stabbing people. But eventually Wolverine is to just start to get some bullets in him. And that is to start to almost slow him down, to almost completely almost stop him at some points, because some bullets hurt more than others. So, but yeah, so Logan is to try to take down some folks, and eventually Harada has to help him out. So this eventually pushes us on to now Logan going and figuring out where Mariko is and to follow her. Mariko ends up getting on a bullet train, and so Logan is to follow her there and is to say, like, hey, this must be one of these, like, bullet trains, right? And Mariko is to tell Logan, it's like, why are you here? Like, if anything, like you're wounded, like you should get the heck out of here, go and see a doctor. And Wolverine is like, no, I'm fine. Like, eventually, Logan is to go to this restroom and try to pop out some bullets and try to, like, eventually find some way with, like, some paper towels or something to just kind of, like, heal up these bandages one way or another. So, but that just leads to us to all of a sudden have more of uh, I would assume Naburo's guys or Shengen's guys to try to come after Moriko. And so that just leads Wolverine eventually just going on and just having to like just toss these guys out of this train. And eventually it also leads to have Logan going back to Mariko saying like, hey, we got to figure out a way out of here. Like, this is a bullet train. How exactly are you assuming that they're just going to easily get out of there? So Mariko is to have to like kind of shift a little bit. So eventually Logan is to have to take down all these guys on this train because it's not like they're going to stop anytime soon. Logan even gets onto the tippy top of the train and just claws his way up the train to then have to fight people on top of this bullet train, which just seems just so like, how is it that Logan is not just like phew like off of this train? This train is going way too fast. So Logan is to claw his way to hold on to this train somehow, which makes no sense to me. And so Logan is to also have these guys who are to be holding on to this train also, which I'm like, I don't even want to talk about the seemingly, like, how fast is this train going and how is it that these people can hold on here? And so we just have these interesting scenes where Logan is to have to jump over these parts of the signs and stuff like that onto this train. And then there's be one point in the movie where Hugh Jackman is to like juke somebody out, where he's to pretend that he's going to jump, and then they jump and they smack into the signs, which I think was awesome. That was a fun part. But yeah, I'm just like, I don't buy that these people can just hold on to this thing and fight on top of this bullet train that's going really, really fast. Like, I see movies where it's hard for like people to fight on like a normal train, let alone a train that's going probably way faster than any probably car or whatever, probably going like a race car. Um, like, I don't get the speed and whatever. So anyways, but who knows? Maybe it's kind of like, when you probably could look at it, maybe it's like one of those like spiders on a car kind of thing, where like a car could probably like could have a spider like hang on to it. So I don't know, trying to figure out the science of it, but whatever. So Wolverine goes back into the train and is like, "Hey, next stop we should probably get off because freaking everybody knows that we're on this train." So Marco, and I think I might have to pause here for a reset moment. Yeah, because we're like an hour in, and I always try to like adjust my seat like 50 times. So going in here, so Logan is to get off, and now Logan is to mention like, hey, like where they're at, like where is the good part of town, and so Murko is to mention that it's kind of like quite a bit of while from where they are at. So Logan is like, okay, great, we'll just go into this one place, we'll just go in this one hotel, and we'll just bunker for the night. So Murko is to eventually just stand there, and so Logan is trying to bargain with this woman, and then Murko finally speaks up and mentions to Logan, hey, this is a love hotel, because Logan is wanting adjoining rooms, and the woman is to mention that there's no adjoining rooms, all certain kind of themed rooms. There's like Space Mountain, and there's like two other goofy other things. So they end up going with Space Mountain. All while they're going through the hotel, they can kind of hear sounds of things, moaning of sorts. So they head into this room, and so eventually we have Logan, who is like still bleeding to death. So Mariko is asking Logan, like, hey, like, where are you going to sleep? And Logan's like, I'm not going to sleep. Which is like, yeah, right, you're now mortal, technically, so you're going to be tired. You're going to eventually fall asleep somehow. You're going to start dozing off. So Logan is, of course, like, still bleeding out. So all of a sudden, Logan is to get so tired that he is to start to doze off. And all of a sudden, he's dreaming about Jean, and Jean is telling Logan, "Hey, Logan, you're slipping a little bit." So Logan is to all of a sudden like wake up because I guess he's to hear the sounds of the men, and so he's to realize that uh, that either Shingen or Naburo's men have made their way to Mariko. So now, like, Logan has to go and like toss a man off this building and try to defend Mariko. We have this one spot where a guy is to almost like taser Logan. It's like, you freaking kidding me? So eventually, of course, we have uh, these guys who are really like just brutally rude to uh, like Logan, calling him a freak or calling him a monster or something like that. So like Logan freaking takes care of all these guys and kills all of them off, which is really just to lead them to just decide, well, maybe we're not going to last very long in this hotel. So Mariko is to mention that supposedly her family had lived in a house a long time ago, and maybe that's one place that Marco is going to like bunker down. And Logan is like, well, that doesn't quite make sense because if anything, that would probably be the one place that like they would probably look to like think of you there. And so Marco's like, we're just gonna go there. So eventually, it seems like these characters are in the clear for a good long while now, and so eventually Logan is to kind of spend some time with Mariko, and Mariko is to eventually ask Logan who is Jean, and so Logan doesn't want to really speak much, but so eventually we get this spot where uh, Logan and Murako were to transition and talk about what they were to talk about with Yoshida. And so Mariko mentions that she was to be left with everything, and that's why Shingen wants her dead. And Yoshida was to talk about, or Logan was to talk about what his time with Yoshida was, mentioning that he was a Ronin, a guy with no purpose. And so Moriko, with the more and more that Logan and her had spent time with one another, because Wolverine was to wake up from some nightmare, and Moriko was to mention about the Kazuri, or the beast that was to protect people at night. Some story that Ishida had to just kind of calm Murako down. So eventually we get to the part where Logan is to mention that he has like nothing really left, and Murako is like, "Well, like, do you feel that still?" Like, and then eventually they kiss one another, and eventually, of course, they go at it, and so that is to lead to the very next day where uh, one woman is to come to this house because evidently there had been this tree that had fell, and so Logan is to come and have this like Paul Bunyan kind of moment where he's to like try to like chop down pieces of this tree. And so afterwards, after doing this whole thing with this tree, he's to mention like, God, I'm just tired, like I'm just exhausted. So Murako is to toss Logan an apple, and no one is getting paid for this apple. Just here's an apple. It would have been funny to kind of see a blooper reel of Logan like missing the apple like 55 times, and eventually he like ends up catching it but ends up falling over or something. So but I'm sure Logan caught it in the very first take because he's freaking Hugh Jackman. He catches everything. Nothing will go over his head. Dave Bautista reference. I will catch it. Nothing goes over my head. I will catch it. Anyways, so uh, we also are to lead Logan to the exact same spot of where he was numerous years ago, where this one little bridge was actually to be the exact same spot where Logan was to be held, and that there was this same kind of monument or some kind of like symbol that Logan saw from his past to just have like Moriko talk about that event and how. So yeah, pushing us on through all that stuff. So eventually, what is to happen is that eventually uh, Marco is to eventually get taken and all this, and so Marco ends up getting taken, and so Logan is to find one of the guys that had tried to take Marco, and Logan I think is to end up messing up his like leg, and now he's limping. So Logan is to grab the guy and just be like, "Hey, like, where is Mariko?" And the guy's like, I'm not going to say nothing. And so Wolverine is just to get his claws out, just like, dude, I'm going to freaking slice and dice you. So Logan is, of course, to get this information. And so now we just see Yuko um, Yuiko. I'm probably ill pronouncing these. I apologize. It's bound to happen. So, because how many times can you say these names? And it's just so, and especially because I didn't have any kind of liquid to just like. Eventually, my mouth is just like chalk right now. So, anyways, Logan is to find Yuko's car, and because Yuiko had called Murko and had talked, and Yuiko had mentioned that Logan is there to protect her, and Murko is just like, well, yeah, but like he's technically doesn't have his healing factor, so yeah, he's kind of weak because they had a whole phone conversation with one another, to where Yuiko is just like, okay, I'm gonna go and like try to get Murko, and I guess that's what really like Yuiko's probably phone was tapped, and that's probably how they found where Mariko was. Mariko. So Yukio finds Logan, and he's limping, and she's like, "Oh shit!" So Logan is to say like, "Hey, take me to Naburo or Noburo." So Logan is to try to go to Naburo's, and Yukio stops him and says like, "Hey, like I found out how you died." And Logan is just like, "Huh?" Cuz Logan, while on the plane, was to mention like, "Hey, like you told me before that you knew those guys in the bar were going to die. Like if you could actually know exactly when that's to happen, like that seems to be a pretty interesting trick." So Yu-Gi-Oh says like, "Yeah, like I did see you die. Like it's kind of a keyhole thing where I can barely see like some pictures or whatever, but like I just saw you holding your heart, and so I think that you're gonna die soon." And Wolverine is like, "Well, hey, like you know what? Like I've been through a number of wars, I've been in another number of situations, and like I haven't died yet, so it's not gonna happen now. So like let's just do this." So Logan goes into Naburo's apartment, and so like Naburo is to be in his in his red underwears and be with his hose, and then all of a sudden Logan busts in. The women are to run off, and so Logan is to grab Naburo and says like, "Hey, you have 10 words." Uh, to tell me like what is all going on, like start talking. So we have Naburo who is to say 9 words, and none of them is to be like, "Hey, do you know who I am?" Freaking Logan, poo. It's like, how many words is that, Yuriko? And it was like 9. Okay, so Logan is like, okay, we have 1 word to explain all this. So Naburo is to mention Shingen, and it's like, okay, like, keep talking. Naburo is to mention that Shingen and Naburo were to, like, seek an agreement that, Ishida was to leave Shingen with everything, and that Naburo would be set up with Mariko to marry her, but Mariko had no interest in ever being with Naburo. Eventually, the only person besides Logan that Mariko ever wanted was actually Harada, who, when they were 15, like wanted to get married to one another, but they wouldn't allow it because it's like, hey, you're too young, like figure things out, and like so Harada, the only reason why he's trying to save Murako is because technically that love is still there, and Harada hasn't exactly found anything besides to be teamed up with Viper consistently in this movie, where Viper is kind of giving Harada orders because Harada can't get orders from Yoshida. So uh, pushing on. So now, because all the crap that Logan had heard spewing out from Naburo, Logan goes and tosses Naburo out of this window, and luckily Naburo is just splashed into this pool. And Yuriko is like, man, like, how did you know he was gonna fall into this pool? And Logan's like, I didn't. Like, I just chucked him out this window because if he was to die, great. If he didn't die, man, was that gonna suck. So now that really transitions us onto having Logan going back to Yoshida's place because now just really Logan has to confront Shingen, but also Logan has to freaking take an X-ray of his bate to figure out what the heck is going on to try and get rid of this thing that is causing Logan to not being able to have his healing factor going on. Like there had been something to nullify his abilities, and he wants to figure out what. So Logan goes on into what was Yoshida's home, I believe, or Shengen's home. So Logan goes and is to try to figure out this X-ray table. And so he ends up laying down, and he ends up going to X-ray himself, and he's like, aha, like, I see this little, like, parasite of a thing grabbing onto my heart. Like, that must be the thing. So, all of a sudden, Yukio is to be in a blade battle with Shingen, and, like, I hope I kind of I've covered most of this movie. Like, I probably haven't really covered much of the Viper stuff because the Viper character is a person I don't really care about in this movie. She's just there. I hate her, and she's a god-awful villain. If anything, I wish that they could have not had this character in this movie and found a better freaking villain, but I guess they were just short on villains in this movie because we've done too much of them. So, and I guess they need to rationalize how to come up with nullifying Wolverine's powers somehow. So, Logan is getting on his deathbed almost, and going and trying to like slice open his chest and try to like put this hand through his. I almost thought I ripped through my shirt. Like going like and grab into his heart and just like pull the octopus whatever thing out of his hands, and just like you would have thought that Wolverine would have smushed that thing with his hands, or would have just like maybe knifed his own chest, and then like that would have sucked. He would have killed himself technically, but like if like Yuriko could have put Wolverine's hand out of his chest, then like everything would have probably been fine, right? Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, so Shingen and Yuriko are fighting, and they knock the X-ray thing to where Logan doesn't even know what he's doing. He's just grabbing something, and I'm just like, God, like how is he even knowing what he's doing? How is he even knowing? Because he's Logan, he just knows. Like he could have just I don't know. But anyways, Logan pulls the thing out luckily, and is to pass out, and the thing is to come off his hand. So Yuriko is fighting Shingen and just not doing such a great job. Eventually she gets freaking like luckily freaking Wolverine and his healing factor right. So Shingen is now wearing all this samurai gear, and so now Wolverine is to heal on up and to be 100%. So now Wolverine is going to take on Shingen, and like we have freaking like Snicked against Kaching. So fight. Snicked, Kaching. So this fight between Shingen and Wolverine is probably the coolest thing, because it looks like it's a fight going on at night, and it looks like it's like the freaking most brutal thing. Like eventually when Shingen is to basically take his sword and put it into Wolverine's chest and then kind of go up with it, and like Shingen is telling Logan, it's like, what are you? And Logan's like, I'm the Wolverine. And then like he ends up going and like freaking necking Shingen and killing him off, and then like Logan just pulls the sword out, and then it just heals back up. Such a cool spot. But yeah, we have this like back and forth battle going on, um, between Shingen starting to lose like one of his blades or both of his blades, and eventually just the and like kill him off that way, and the sword going in the chest. Like, what are you? The Wolverine. Coolest spot in the movie. uh like all that crap doesn't matter after the whole like battle with like a Wolverine and this Silver Samurai. I'm just like, you guys had the best spot, you should have ended with that right there. But they kept on. So Logan's to dismantle Schengen to eventually find that there is to be a sign prepared for him. Hey, if you want her, come get her. And it's to be a sign of this building, which Logan is to see on this map. So he's like, okay, so I need to go there. Get me there. So Logan is to make it to this spot that is to be at this map, which is to lead him to get through this town to eventually get to the Yoshida compound, which Shingen has mentioned uh, that supposedly they have been, or somebody has mentioned, I think, I want to say it's Yoshida had mentioned that, or wait, I want to say it's Shingen that mentioned that supposedly Yoshida had been bizarrely stockpiling animanium for years into that compound and never understood why. And there had been a spot where supposedly they had mentioned that Shingen had tried to uh, like hide the fact that the company had been like really like bleeding out money like it's nobody's business, because Yoshida wanted to cover this whole Silver Samurai thing. And so Shingen was trying to cover up for the fact that the company was going under, and Shingen thought that Yoshida would give him the company after all of that crap had happened, but Shingen didn't get the company after all, covering up for Yoshida's losses. So, anyways, so we go on, and Wolverine is to go on and now have to fight all these ninjas through this town that are going to arrow uh, Logan's back consistently and just try to like stall him from getting to this compound. So eventually Yoshida is to, or not Yoshida, um, Harada is to, I'm getting the names confused because there's too many like similar names. Um, so Harada is to eventually go and dip his uh, dip his arrows into the Viper's poison to try to slow Wolverine down. So we get where Wolverine is just kind of like slicing some of these daggers from his back, and like the extended scene is where Logan is to all of a sudden like be like tied with this snow plow that Yukio is to have, where she's just running over a bunch of ninja guys, and all of a sudden blood is being splouted out all over the rooftops uh, in this movie. And so we just get a bunch of spots where like Yuriko is just kind of running over some people, and eventually Wolverine is to take out this snowplow and to explode it with a cigar in the mouth to eventually just annihilate a lot of these ninjas, and then to eventually go off and try to make it to the compound. Uh, like there's also this one spot where Wolverine was to get so many blades into the back of his back that eventually I think he ends up falling over at some moment. And I think that's the theatrical release where there's to be so many just blades going to the back of Wolverine's back that eventually he just falls over. But in this extended cut, we just have it where like Wolverine is to take all these ninjas down, and eventually Yoshida is to eventually be at the complex. Uh, so pushing on. So Logan is to make it to the complex, and then that eventually leads to I think, because how do we get to chair? How do we get Logan into that chair? That's where I'm confused. There must have been a spot. Yeah, there must have been a spot where Logan had gotten knocked down because we have Harada. So he must have God. How do we transition from Logan to get into the compound to get him knocked down to have him in the chair? I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe there's not a smooth transition for all that. But anyways, so Mariko is to be at the Yoshida compound because she was to be taken, and Wolverine is to end up in this chair, and the Silver Samurai is to be this big thing, big wonky thing that makes no sense to me, that it's so freaking massive. So Viper is to tell Logan that all of this stuff was to be planned to a T, and Wolverine is still to threaten, like, "Hey man, if you get me out of this chair, I'll give you a fight." And so when Wolverine is pop out his claws, Viper is like, "Yes, that's the only thing we had left to worry about was to how are you gonna get your claws out." So Silver Samurai is getting set up to eventually go and put his sword down. And Mariko is in the other room talking to Yashira, or Harada. There we go. Names. Harada is talking to Mariko, but like, "Hey, we can get everything that we wanted. You and me, it could be us forever, And Mariko is just like, "Yeah, but that Logan guy, he's a man in the he's a wild man in the sack compared to you, Harada." So and plus Harada has just been pining away from Mariko for way too long. He's kind of the creepy guy now. So Mariko is just like, "Yeah, but that Logan though, I want another piece of that Logan." You know what I mean? Anyways, so Logan is to be set up, and Harada is just to close the doors for Mariko to not see what's going on with Logan. And so what ends up happening is Harada and Mariko are to embrace, and Mariko is to grab a blade to shove into Harada's knee, making him unable to move fairly quickly. So Mariko runs off to go and run in front of Logan before Silver Samurai is to put his blades down. So now, Silver Samurai will all of a sudden accidentally cut the chair that Logan is in, and now Logan is free. And so now we just get a ton of moments where Logan is to just tackle the Silver Samurai, knocking him down a couple flights of or levels of this whole laboratory compound thing. We're to see that a lot, but we're also to see a part where the Silver Samurai is to chop off one of Logan's claws, where he's just like, the whole time with these metal pieces into his hand for a bulk of this movie. Like, for bulk of the scenes, I mean, with this. Uh, so really, basically, pretty much all these moments are really just Logan either trying to fight Viper, which I think she ends up kind of getting away out of all this. Like, she ends up having to like peel off her skin weirdly, and that is taking her forever to do that. Like, she's all just bald now, and like she's just taking forever to just peel back her old like layers and hair and whatever. So like, give her something to do. Like, this girl is not a threat whatsoever, but like they try to play it up like she really is. So uh eventually, when Logan is to be consistently with Silver Samurai, Logan is to eventually get a sword out of the samurai's hands. And so Logan can't figure out how to defeat the Silver Samurai. And he's like, hey man, why is it that my sword can't light up? What the heck? And so we have the flashback moment in the early part of this movie where Yoshida is to mention that a Japanese sword needs two hands. And so Logan is like, oh, two hands. So Logan is to put two hands on this sword and just be like, hey, bub, like, I'm going to freaking come with you with this sword. But, like, really is so, like, all of this just breaks down to, like, Logan just, like, seemingly just continually, like, just tackling this guy down some levels. But eventually, Logan is to chop off supposedly the head of this thing, and it's to fall down again, and so is Logan, and so that eventually leads to the real and much more important part, where Logan is to be like almost falling off of this complex whatsoever to this like cliff. Whoa, Jesus. My battery's almost dead of my phone. That's why I made that sound. I was like, Jesus. Every freaking sound of my phone scares the crap out of me. I apologize. So, Logan is dangling onto this thing, and Silver Samurai is to take this opportunity to chop off the other animanium claws. And so now Silver Samurai, we end up finding out, is Yoshida underneath, that he's still alive. And so now Yoshida is grabbing onto Wolverine's hands to lift him up, to not like, hey, I'm going to save you. No, he's going to drain Wolverine of all his Handemanium, or all of his healing factor through his bone claws. So to transform Yoshida into a very much more younger Yoshida, and he's like, yeah, I feel invincible. So all of a sudden, Murako is to come on in. Murako. That gosh darn Murako. That Mariko is to come in and to all of a sudden have pieces of Wolverine's claws. And so Murako ends up chucking the claw, one of the Wolverine claws, into Yoshida's head. And all of a sudden, Yoshida is telling Murako, like, hey, like, why are you doing this? It's like, I'm your uncle. Like, why are you doing all this to me? So Murako is to also go and slide and put another claw into Yoshida's neck, which is to make him bleed still. So that all of a sudden gives Wolverine the opportunity to unlatch from Yoshida, and all of a sudden he starts to get himself back again. And so all of a sudden he's like, and then freaking the bone claws come out. I'm like, yeah, back to the origin story, back to bone claws. And it's kind of hilarious because in Days in Future Past, like it's hilarious because we have supposedly adamantium claws back into Wolverine because you see that in the future, but then he has to go back to the past where he has bone claws anyways. So, like, what was the whole process of him getting back the adamantium claws? Like, that didn't quite make sense to me. That didn't sit well for me. But, like, I guess over time, maybe the adamantium, like, healed back into the claws over time. I'm not buying it. So, so now Wolverine gets his bone claws back, and he like just starts tearing through Yoshida's uh, metal robot body to eventually go and put bone claws into Yoshida's actual chest, and then takes the whole machine, bone claws still in hand, and chucks this whole thing overboard or over this cliff. And so, like, Logan's last message to Ishida was, of course, like, hey man, you wanted me to say goodbye? Well, sayonara. Freaking chucks him over, kills him off. He's like freaking flopping and hitting and smacking into things. So, Wolverine is to ask Mariko, it's like, hey, you alright? You good? Like Maruko's like, yeah, I'm fine, and then he ends up just like freaking falling over, and so all of a sudden Jean is to be like, hey, you want to come on down to freaking heaven? Like it's great here. Like I'm getting freaking Slurpees and and so Jean's like, hey, you finally coming? Like you finally gonna die? And Wolverine's like, no, like I think that there's stuff I still need to do here. And but Jean is like, but I'm all alone. And Wolverine was like, hey, like you did this to yourself, Jean. Like I'm sorry, like I'll always love you, but like you did this to yourself. And so Jean is like, well, okay, well I guess I'll go and I'll find Cyclops, who's also dead, and just like talk to him then. See you later. So, like, hey, freaking technically Charles Xavier is maybe still in heaven out of the numerous times that he's probably died in the X-Men world of things, with the exclusion of end credits. So, now everything is technically resolved. Mariko has everything. Everyone else in Mariko's family, everyone else is in Mariko's family is basically dead. So, like, Mariko has no one left to really be threatened by. Maybe besides Viper, which I don't know if she's dead or not, because maybe she's still like flinging around somewhere, vipering around somewhere. I hope she's like, I don't know if she's dead or not, but I hope she is because she was a stupid character. But it doesn't matter. And also, Silver Samurai goes and kills off Narada because Silver Samurai is to basically just stab Narada in the chest, or Harada in the chest, and take him down. Because technically, Harada goes and like puts an arrow into Silver Samurai's head, but that does nothing. And so Silver Samurai just puts a freaking blade into Harada's chest, killing him because he was just a guy that followed orders. So, pushing on. So now Logan is just to go back to what I would assess is America because he has been hidden for far too long. And so I'm just like, hey man, why don't you just have a baby with Murko? And then eventually go on to like freaking be in America. Like, hey man, freaking put a bun in that oven, like, so we can get some Draken, man. Get some Draken. We could have had a Draken movie, but we never did, and we're never going to. God, that was such a disappointing thing. I'm like, why can't we have Draken? Draken's freaking cool in some stories. Like, man, wouldn't that have been an interesting way to play out like X-23? That movie was to all of a sudden have Draken, and we didn't know that there was another Wolverine technically out there the whole time besides X-23. That would have been sweet, but no. Maybe if they ever do an X-23 movie, we can have Draken, and wouldn't that be freaking just mwah, that'd be freaking just amazing to have Draken all of a sudden the X-23 movie, like to like seek revenge on his father's death, but then eventually we just find out that Logan is still alive anyways. Like, oh my god, Old Man Logan story part dose. We're gonna maybe do a better Old Man Logan story this time around, I hope. So, yeah. So with that said, here's also like some also goofy scenes. Yuiko was to be on the plane with Wolverine, and there was to be one scene where Wolverine was supposed to get the actual Wolverine outfit that actually was to look like the '90s version of Wolverine, which was like, yeah, but then I'm like, why do we have to have that? Like, we don't have to have a Wolverine that has a mask on, but people might feel differently. But I don't know. I think that it would probably always look goofy if Wolverine actually had a headpiece. I just don't think people would buy it. I don't think it would look good. Like, and I think we just had too many movies now where Logan has been without a headpiece, and it just seems weird to do that now. Feels like we're going backwards, but who knows? With another Wolverine movie, maybe they'll put a headpiece on him just so that way they can like make him seem different than the original thing. And every single time they want to go back to the headpiece thing, like everybody just has that attachment. Like, hey man, I'm more than happy to have a unmasked Hugh Jackman if we are to ever have one, because there's supposedly some things going around that more than likely there might be a Wolverine versus Hulk movie, live action style, or supposedly Hugh Jackman Wolverine might be in Deadpool 3, which I can't really buy happening, but like I just feel that Hugh Jackman is to be done. Like I just feel that like there's nothing left for him to do, and I think Logan was the best possible send off for this character. So if they're gonna do another Wolverine, just have him be either X-23 or Draken. So that way we can get a different Wolverine story to maybe tease that there is going to eventually be another Wolverine and give us Draken instead. Just kind of tease it a little bit. Just say that there's going to be a young Wolverine, and then give him Draken instead, and just like suck it. But yeah, so end credit scene is to have Hugh Jackman or Logan make his way back to the States, where all of a sudden we are to eventually find out that Magneto is to be at this airport also, and so is Charles, to tell Logan, hey, there's a big event coming on the horizon. Like, stuff is hitting the fan. Like, did you just see that commercial of Trask? He's going to be the next villain of this franchise, the Days of Future Past. So gear up for that, Wolverine. So Wolverine is pop out his bone claws at Magneto, and so Magneto is to stall Wolverine and just to say like, hey, I don't come to you as a villain, I come to you as a friend. And there are also some other friends that you need to see. So all of a sudden, Charles is to bust out, and Wolverine's like, hey, how are you still alive? And Charles is like, well, we'll never explain it, so suck it, fans. We'll never explain how I just came back to life. We'll never explain it. People will have to theorize it for years, because it will bother them. But they never explain it. So Charles is just like, well, you're not the only one, or I told you long ago that that you're not the only one with powers and abilities and whatever. And so that's how they just wrap it up with just saying, hey, this is going to be a continuous from Days of Future Past. Check out that movie. because it's gonna be really cool with Holly Berry and Hugh Jackman. Everyone comes back to eventually just die off for whatever reason, and Kitty Pryde is just mind meld with Hugh Jackman so that way he can go back into decades of time. So with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. I'm sorry for how freaking like man this thing was long. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.